All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you today. My name's Greg Hintz, and I get to spend the next hour with you talking about communication. In fact, we're talking about communicating to connect. So, what made you come to this class? What was one thing you're really hoping to learn or take away from today?
My pastor told me I had
to. Pastor Tony had to. I happen to be his pastor. Absolutely, you must be here. Absolutely. What else?
I'm the director of connections at our church, and I just started sending out Serve E-Blast, and really getting people to read them and step up. And
okay.
I read this, I thought, is there anything else I could be doing? Because this, seems to be working.
Awesome. That's great. A way to get volunteers going.
With the disparate attendance these days and online worshipers, we need to think about new ways to communicate.
All right, yeah, online worshipers. COVID kind of changed everything for the church, didn't it? I wish I owned some Zoom stock about 2020, right? I don't know how it did, but I bet it's doing pretty well. Everything kind of shifted in churches that for a long time were like face-to-face. It had to switch and change a little bit. So that's good, how to get people plugged in. And communication is the thing that affects all of us, right? Every single day we're communicating. And I really want to speak to you through that lens. I want to speak to you through the lens of communicating on a regular basis, whether it's one-on-one, from a stage, to your church, to your staff, or maybe even to your parents. I know I talked to someone who is a preschool director, and that communication sometimes to moms and dads, how can we do that? Well, my name's Greg. There's my family, minus my 22-year-old who had to work the day we took the family photos. I live in heaven on earth, Wickenburg, Arizona, about an hour and a half away from here. Small little cowboy town. Been there coming on 20 years. I've considered Arizona home for me. I pastor a church there called The Place Church. It's a non-denominational Christian church there in this community. On top of that, I do stuff. I help coach men and do different things like that. I've been communicating now for the last few decades. And I've learned a lot along the way, but I got to be honest with you, I think my greatest education in communication has happened in the last 2 years. I believe COVID really is calling all of us to re-examine communication. And I think Jesus, living inside of our hearts and our lives, right, is inspiring us to do whatever it takes to reach people for His glory. Amen? That's what it's all about. Let's pray. Will you bow your heads with me? Father God, we thank you for this moment. We thank you for what you're going to do today in our hearts and in our lives. We thank you, Father, for the plans and purposes that you have for each and every single person here. Book of Ephesians talks about those plans, Lord, that you have plans for your children that are here. You have things for them to do, places for them to go, people for them to meet. And I pray that in this session today, Father, that their hearts will be lit ablaze, that they'll be looking in a new way of what communication is and how to communicate at their best. I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. As I was preparing for this message, I was reminded of a story. And it was a story about a guy who was in his house. He was getting ready to leave. And as soon as he was getting ready to leave, the power went out. His whole house went dark. He got kind of scared and he dropped his keys. And so he starts looking all over for his keys. And next thing you know, he's tripping over things. He's bumping into things. He can't see anything because his house is dark. And as he's looking, he looks out the window. And as he looks out the window, he sees a street light lighting up the road. And he thinks to himself, well, why am I in the dark when there's light right there that I could see? And so he goes out underneath this street light and he starts looking for his keys. His neighbor comes home as he's looking all over for his keys, and his neighbor's like, well, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm looking for my keys. He's like, well, I can help. The second guy starts helping underneath the street light, right, looking for all these keys. Finally, after 5-10 minutes, the neighbor says to him, hey, well, around what area did you lose your keys? And he's like, well, I lost my keys in the house. And he's like, well, why are you looking out here? And he says, well, I'm looking out here because this is where the light is. And I think about that sometimes because we oftentimes are looking externally for what needs to change internally. And I think communication is the same way. Communication, I can learn all the tips. How many guys, I'm sure you've learned, you've studied books or gone to sessions. I mean, by now, you've been drinking out of a fire hose for the last 2 days, right? I mean, there has been so much information, external stuff that has come into your life. In fact, you're thinking, when I get home, I got to redo this whole thing. I'm going to have to build this whole new ministry. I'm going to have to do this and change this and call that person. And we have all of these externals that we can address. But communication, I believe, really at the core doesn't start externally. Communication actually starts internally. It starts in our hearts and in our lives. It starts with the I and me, the us and we, right? Who are we and where are we at? I love what Jesus said, and you can read this in Matthew chapter 27, verses 37 and 39 through 39. Jesus was asked the most important question, right? He said, out of all of the commandments, there's this scribe, this say like a lawyer, someone who really knows the law, comes to Jesus and said, what is the greatest commandment? Now, what you have to know is that there were all kinds of commands that the Jewish people were trying to obey, all of these rules and all of these laws. But Jesus answered really quick. He said, love God with your whole heart, mind, soul, and strength. And he said, the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And then he said this, he said, the entirety of the law and the prophets hang on these two things. And I want to tell you that every single thing with communication hangs on these two things. You can have every trick, you can know everything, you can buy every cool program that's out there, but if they're not done with the right motivation, with loving God and loving our neighbor, then it doesn't really matter anyways. See, the first part is to imagine where we are. Before I ever say a word, I want to make sure my motives are pure. Why are you communicating? What are you doing? Why are you doing that thing? And not just the what, but why. Because if my motives are not pure, it doesn't matter what I say, it's not going to come out right. Because every time that you communicate, what is happening internally will come out externally. So the very first step for any of us as Christians and believers is to examine our heart. Am I doing it from a place of love? Why am I doing this ministry? And maybe, sometimes I make a joke. Anyone work in the kids ministry? All right, I got some kids ministry. I was a children's pastor. It was my first job ever working in a church. I was a kids pastor. And no one ever wanted to join the kids ministry to volunteer. The reason why, once you volunteered, you were never seen again. You just kind of disappeared, right? And I think about that when my motivation to come see him was desperation. You better come or else these kids are going to tie me up and bad things are going to happen. I need your help. I need you. But it wasn't from coming to them from the opportunity to change a little kid's life, to actually make a difference. And just think about that communication in and of itself. If I'm trying to get helpers, if I always come at this need person, we need this and we need that. If you're saying I need, you're missing it. You're missing it completely. Because you can't operate from a need. You operate from an opportunity. There is an incredible opportunity to change the lives of 3 to 5-year-olds in our preschool. To allow them to hear the good news about Jesus Christ, and I want to know if you want to help me do that. You hear that? Versus, hey, we're 2 volunteers short, and I need someone to come in and work with the preschoolers. And every hand is like this. Right? No one wants to volunteer for that. Think about, where is it coming from? Where is my motivation? Is it coming from a healthy place? Is it coming from a good motive? Is it coming from a good place? I love this. Psalm 26, verse 2. Here's what it said. Test me, O Lord, and try me. What does he say? Examine my heart and examine my mind. What if we did that before we had to communicate, before we had to send out that email? What if we did that before we had to get up on that stage? What if we did that before we had to have that parent-teacher conference? What if we did that before we had to bring all these kids together, all these adults together, all these group leaders together? God, examine my heart. Where am I? What about the meeting you have to have with a difficult person? You guys don't have any difficult people in your church, do you? All right, maybe a couple. All right, maybe a couple. When you got to deal with them, sometimes these people have been so difficult, when you come into that, you're ready to fight. You're ready to defend. You're ready to make your point. You're ready to teach them how the wrong they are. You got 5 scriptures in your back pocket, and you're ready to hit them with them, you know? Oh, maybe that's just me. But what if I change that? Because even the difficult people in your life are in your life for a reason. Do you know no one is in your life without God's permission right now? If God is omniscient, God is omnipotent, which we believe that He is all-powerful, all-knowing, that He knows everything in your life, that even the difficult people are there for a reason. Have you asked God what the reason is? Have you asked God, God, what are you trying to teach me with this person? Because until you learn the lesson, guess what? They're going to stay there. Or God has an incredible opportunity of creating another one and bringing them into your life. You've had that experience, haven't you? Yeah. I can tell. Because there's things for us to learn. So examine my heart, God. Know my heart. Know where I'm at. And when I come with the pure motives, sometimes you're going to have those hard conversations. That's what leadership is about. That's what influence is about. But you can do it with your motives being pure and your motives being right. Matthew chapter 5, this is Jesus teaching, verses 23 and 24. He said this, "So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift." What is Jesus talking about there? Heart. And I want you to see something. He's not saying if you remember that you have a problem with somebody else. What's He saying? If you remember that somebody else has a problem with you. See, that's how aggressive God is at making this thing right. Making this connection that we have with people right. And so, this is hard though. This is the Christian stuff that is difficult. This is the not easy part. Sure, we can pray, we can show up on Sundays, and we may even volunteer for the preschool, right? But this is intense. This is abnormal. When you live like this, the way Jesus wants us to live, when you live like this, people are like, what is wrong with that person? It's different. But you know what it does? It keeps our hearts pure. And when I look at that, isn't that what Jesus is after? Before you give your offering, before you do this act of worship, before you come to me, let's keep our hearts pure. So anytime we communicate, we have to ask ourselves, how is my heart? Where am I at? Why am I doing this thing? I must communicate next with that which lines up with my values. Now, I just found this out this week because I got talking to someone who loves essential oils. Are there any essential oil people? All right, over here. All right, it's all over. See what I'm saying? Obviously, this person has talked to you too, because when I talked to them, I didn't know nothing about essential oils, right? I was totally ignorant. But by the time I was done with a 10-minute conversation with this lady, I was ready to put my life saving on essential oils, all right? For everything. I mean, it's like you got a pain in your left right toe, right? Okay, we got an essential oil for that. We got something for you. We can fix that. We can fix whatever it was. But it wasn't the facts that were doing it. It was the passion that they had when they were sharing it. What were they doing? They were communicating with me. Listen, I wanted nothing to do with essential oils. I didn't care about essential oils. When I started talking, by the end, I'm ready to buy some. That's what passion does. But they were passionate. They value essential oils. That thing you have to communicate, do you value it? Because listen, if you don't value it, you're going to have a really hard time selling it. You're going to have a real hard time getting people on your side if you don't value it. If you're getting, okay, I'll give you a good example. Some of you guys, this one may be a little edgy for you. I'm sorry. I wouldn't normally do this till the end of my lesson, right? But someone was wearing a hat in church. I know. I was surprised lightning bolts did not strike them. All right? This really offended somebody else in the church, and they brought it up, and they want to, because they're offended, they want to go to the individual and talk to them, which is fine. That's biblical. You can do that. That sounds great. But as I'm talking to this person, I am not as passionate about hat wearing in church as he is. He is very passionate about it. He is very I think he's lost sleep over this guy wearing a hat in church. All right? You guys know this person, not this actual person, but someone just like him, right? Someone that takes this little thing and makes it into this big thing. I have no passion because I don't value that the way that they do. Okay? So then, is that wrong or right? I believe it's subjective. I believe that it's up to you. It's up to where you're at. Some people it bothers, some people it doesn't. It doesn't bother me. So when I communicate, I can't have passion about that. I'm never going to passionately tell you that you're not allowed to wear a hat in church because I don't care. Okay? Personally, I don't care. You got to have the passion if you want it. If you're not passionate about it, get a new job. Oh man, that was hard. Sorry about that. But if you're not passionate, do something different. Do you know God, in all of His creativity, He has all of these different things, these different opportunities for you to do. Sometimes we get stuck in this one and we look at it and we're not passionate about it. We have no passion for it. We don't even want to do it. We only volunteer because no one else would do it, and no one else wants to help. That's why we've been stuck there the last 5 years. Got to have passion. You got to want that thing. And then to grow your knowledge is important. This lady, she grew her knowledge on essential oils to the point she was passionate. Where you have to communicate, are you knowledgeable about it? Do you know what you're having to communicate to someone else? Because if you don't know what that thing is, you're going to have a hard time communicating it. The new policies in the church, do you know what they are? Do you have to communicate them with your people? How about the policies that you have for maybe your youth ministry? Do you believe in them? Do you know what they are? Whatever you're having to communicate, when you know inside of yourself what they are, then you're going to be more confident communicating them with someone else. So do you know it? Are you passionate about it? Are you ready to go for it? And then looking inside of yourself of your core values. Now, core value, how would you define it? Someone tell me. And there's no wrong answer, so don't worry. You won't get any demerits. What do you got? How would you say? Yes?
Something that doesn't change in any context.
All right, something that doesn't change in any context. Love it. What else? See, this is what happens when you get the 8:30 crowd. See what happens?
Something I believe in and I'm willing to stand up for.
Something you believe in and are willing to stand up for. Give me one more. Yes?
It's like your non-negotiable values. What you stand for and what you surround yourself with people that have like values.
That is perfect, right? What you are. Now, here's what you got to know about core values. They're subjective. That means that there's not like 10 that there has to be, but in your life, your core value may be different than my core value. And that's not bad. It's not wrong. But you have to know, what do you value? What do you value? And so I just want you to think about that inside of your life. What do you think would be 3 personal core values for you? 3 non-negotiables that are really important on your journey of life. Can you give me one? Honesty. Love it. Give me another one. Integrity. Next? Trust. Compassion. Seek growth. Humility. Good. Kindness. And I love all these. These are great. And here's what you got to know about core values too, is that you can even have some core values that aren't so thoughtful. right? For example, I think about people that have the core value of the outdoors. Some people value the outdoors. I think of some people that value animals, right? They love animals. I think of some people who value adventure. That's a good value to have. That's something for you to have. And so you can think outside of that box too. But when you know that and you can communicate in that place. So I'm going to use our first one, honesty. Right? Honesty was our first one. Traditionally, normally, always the first one whenever I ask it. Core value and honesty are like peanut butter and jelly. They just go together oh so well, right? But here's what I want you to think about. Have you ever, what if I say my value is honesty, but I lie all the time? What can I do? All right. She just jumped right to that, all right? What may I want to do before that?
Pray about it.
Pray about it. How about stop lying? All right? Just stop lying. If it's really my core value, then I can change my behavior. Okay? Now, here's the next one, though. If I'm unable to change my behavior, what's the other thing I can do? Change your value. You would move your value from honesty to dishonesty, get a job selling used cars, and make a lot of money. Exactly. It'll be great. It'll be great.
To integrity, it's doing what you should when no one's watching you.
Ooh.
No human is watching you, but God is watching you.
Ooh, that's good, but not nearly as funny. All right.
My friend here, I either act silly or I go deep.
All right, well, you can go silly and deep with me too. I love it, I love it. But exactly right, but if we don't know what our core values are, what happens when we're asked to communicate something outside of our values? Is that going to be hard? What happens when someone wants you to lie? It's not a big deal. Just, tell them, it's not that you're big. Tell them you had to do something. And they want you to lie. Well, now there's a storm inside of us. Because now I got to communicate this thing. But honesty is my value. So how on earth am I going to be able to do that? See, it has to line up with your values. And if it doesn't line up with your values, no is a complete sentence. I'm going to say it again. No is a complete sentence. You can just say no and walk. You don't need to make excuses. You don't need to tell them why. You don't need to do nothing. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, but that doesn't line up with my fifth core value. You don't have to do any of that. All you can say is no, but know thyself, because you're going to be unable to communicate if you're asked to communicate something that is outside of your value system. And I mean, just a side note for you, it would be great if you would work up your core values. Like if you knew what your values were and you were aware of them. These are the things these are the hills I'm unwilling to surrender. I'm willing to die on this hill. What are those values for you? Like honesty, integrity, those important, adventure, these are the things that are really, really key to my life. Okay? And then when you look at it, now I want to ask you the why. When we look at this core value, like why is honesty important to you?
Because that's what builds trust.
That's what builds trust. Why is trust important to you?
Because it is the conduit to interact and communicate and accomplish.
Ooh, that's good. It's the conduit. It's that thing that connects, right? Trust connects people. If I trust you, I can be greaterly connected to you, Good, good. Who else? Another core value? The why behind your core value. Anyone? All right, let me ask you this one. We did integrity. Why?
My first one was humility.
Okay.
Christ humbled himself to come to earth. God came as man.
Yeah.
And if you're the opposite of being humble is being prideful, and that's just a total ego trip.
Yeah.
If it's too much about you, it should be more about God.
I got you. So because Jesus was humble, you want to be humble because being a Christian means to be Christ-like. Yeah?
Likes to talk in
Oh, yeah. I like it better. She's she's so humble.
That's right. She is, that is the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
This is my friend. Right?
Yeah.
And she is a quiet leader, and she is a humble servant
Mm.
of Christ.
And I love that you said humble servant too, because a lot of times your core values, if you ask someone that was closest to you, they could tell you. They could tell you, like what do you think a few of my, if they really know you, they would know right away. Oh, I know this is really important. I know trust is really important to you. I know honesty is really important because of how you live your life. Okay? But we got to know the why behind the what. For me in my life, and this is good in any kind of leadership position, I've served in church over 2 decades, right, as a Christian leader, right, as a pastor in some regard inside of a church. And early on in my life, I got used to doing something, and that was sweeping things under the rug, because I did not like conflict. Is there any others out there? I did not like conflict at all. I wanted nothing to do with conflict. My dad, he was kind, he was loving, but he was also, he was very critical, and he was very like, it has to be like this, it has to be like this. You know what I mean? And I think that really had a profound effect on me when I was a child. So when I became an adult, I was like, I don't really want any conflict. Here's the problem. Churches and conflict, they always go together. Right? Eventually, I promise you. If you haven't got there yet, give yourself a week. All right? Conflict is sure to be there. And what I found was when you sweep things under the rug, before you know it, it gets so, everybody's tripping over it. Bad things are happening, these horrible things. And so one of the values that was created in difficulty for me was the value of a firefighter. And what I mean by that is I made a commitment to any time I saw a spark, I'd run to the fire and put it out. This was not easy when I began. It was very hard, very difficult. I wanted nothing to do with it, like going and the whole thing. And here's what I found out. 100% of the time, what I made up in my head was much worse than it was. In other words, I figured they're going to leave the church, they're going to get mad at me, they're going to hate me, they're going to say this thing, they're going to set my house on fire, No, I didn't think it. But, you think just these horrible, horrible things, and then you have, I had so many where I'd sit down and be like, hey, we have a little problem with that, and they'd be like, oh, I totally get it. I totally understand. I missed it there. And I'm like, that's cool. Can we not do it again? Yeah, absolutely. Boom. And that was it. And so I found that this firefighter value was very important, but to link that back to communication, we cannot sweep things under the rug. If you have any kind of leadership influence at all, no matter where it is, whether it's in the preschool or up on, in the life group ministry, small group ministry, wherever you're at, you got to run and have that conversation. Okay? So I would encourage you, if you're in any kind of influence position at all, to make sure the core value of the firefighter is beginning to be cultivated in your life. It won't be easy, but it also won't be as hard as you've made it in your mind. Okay? We make it oftentimes much worse than we have to. The other thing I want you to know is connective communication can only come from authenticity. Can only come from authenticity. This is, in my opinion, one of the greatest shifts that has taken place inside of our culture. I believe that your average person is so hungry for authenticity. They're so hungry for truth. They're so hungry for you to be you. I remember this story about Oliver Cromwell. He was this general, this war leader and stuff. And Oliver Cromwell went to get his, back in the day they used to make paintings, like portraits of people. And Oliver Cromwell went in. And the one thing about Oliver Cromwell is he had warts all over his face. All right? So the person painting this painting of Oliver Cromwell was painting it, and Oliver's facing him, and he's behind, and he's painting it. And the guy gets this idea, the painter does. He says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get rid of those warts. I'm going to hook him up, man. This is going to be the best portrait that Oliver Cromwell has ever seen in his life, right? So he paints his face perfect, no warts on it, right? Turns it around, the great moment. He's expecting to, Oliver's going to love it and just rain praises down on him. He shows him the thing. Oliver Cromwell flips out, grabs it, breaks it in half, throws the guy against the wall, and says, paint it again, but paint it with warts. And I thought about that in our lives. Oliver Cromwell was so secure in who he was that he wanted nothing to change it. He was truly being authentic. Not nice. He wasn't being kind. He wasn't a very kind guy at all. But in that moment, he was being authentic. Have you tapped into your authentic self? Not a mask, not like church Greg and then home Greg, right? But myself, all the time, your authentic self. This is, in my opinion, one of the most difficult things inside of our culture to do, because we live in a culture that tells us how we should be. You should be like this person, you should have that, and you should do this. And then we join church, and church tells us how we should be. Well, you should be like this, and you should act like that, and you should do this. And then, and we have all of these things. Maybe if you go to school, or in your home, or maybe in your family, or in your culture, there's all of these aspects that are telling us who we should be. But my question is, do you know who you are? I went my entire life not knowing who I was. I went my entire life not knowing who I was. I didn't even know that was possible. I did things, successful, I was able to do jobs and stuff, but really, who are we at our core? Oftentimes, this idea in our mind has been created by somebody else. We can't communicate from that place. If we do, guess what I'm communicating? I'm communicating what I believe that they want to hear. I'm filtering everything in my life through how are they going to receive it? How is it going to work for them? How are they going to take it? Everything is filtered through that until the moment where I said, I know who I am. I remember when I first became a pastor, one of my big fears was offending people. I would stay up late at night. I'm like, if I'm going to speak, I'm going to offend somebody. And I'll never forget, God's cool sometimes. He just gives you that little thing in your heart. It's like God talking to us. I got this little feeling that said this. It said, Greg, 50% of the people are never going to like you. Get over it. Oh man, you would have. I thought I was having a big one, man. I thought I was going down. What I found out is more like 30%. All right, but I think God was just exaggerating because He wanted me to know that if we're going to speak for God, whether we're leading a preschool or leading a congregation or a ministry, no matter what, if we're speaking for God, we cannot be concerned with how everyone wants to hear it, but we have to speak truth. Confident that God has called us, anointed us for this purpose in this moment, that if God brings you to it, He will bring you through it, and our only responsibility is to be authentic, honest, and true. And if you can do that, I'm telling you, it's going to change your life. It's going to change everything inside of your life if you can come to that place where you can put the mask down and you can just be authentically you. Now, this is scary sometimes because there's some places where that's not safe. Can you give me an example where that wouldn't be safe to be your authentic self? Where would it not be safe to be your authentic self? In church? Explain more information, please. How so, though?
Well, you always feel like you have to be this perfect person, which kind of makes you unapproachable.
Mm-hmm.
As a Christian, you hide a lot of stuff. Or if you're going through stuff, you really don't want people to know that you have this going on in your life. So it's hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I mean, even for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there's people that it's like, I know what they're going through behind the scenes, and you never know it because they put on that face of, oh no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
My husband just beat me last night, but I'm fine.
Right.
And and that's very sad
That's right.
So there's my explanation, sorry.
I think that's one of the biggest problems in churches today.
Hmm.
And it always bothers me when somebody comes and says, Pastor, I just got out of the hospital. Why didn't you call us and tell us so we could pray for you? We could be there for you. Most men wanted to go it alone.
Yeah.
We are a group together that all have issues.
Mm-hmm.
We need to share.
And then coming off of this right here, what you're saying is absolutely true. You know, this idea of I need to be perfect. If you're in a Christian leadership position today in any regard, there is in the back of your mind an expectation of how you should act. There's an expectation of who you should be. In the back of your mind, maybe not on a conscious level, but you think it. And when that person cuts you off, you think twice about flicking them off. Oh, did I just say that? I'm sorry. Maybe, sorry. Didn't. Sometimes you're like, I don't know. Sometimes I just do it. But you know what I'm saying? We go back and forth with that thinking through that lens. And if your authentic self is flicking people off, you may want to work on that. Okay, but that's a different issue. The issue for us in being authentic is much, much more important. You know, when I think about the greatest connection between your congregation, your workers, your people, whatever it is, and you, it's going to be that moment you make a mistake and own it. Not when you cover it up. Not when you pretend. That moment when you could look them in the eye and say, I missed it. You know, when I got on you, you know, in front of those other people, I was really upset. I was kind of overtaken by emotion. I probably shouldn't have raised my voice at you in front of all the workers. I'm sorry. Like the minute you do that, what happens, it just deflates everything that they've been thinking because they went home angry with you, they've talked about you, they passively aggressively posted on Facebook about you. You know what I'm talking about. You read it, and you knew it was about you. You knew it was about what you did. And sometimes we want to dig in, and we want to say, well, I was right with that. Well, listen, you may have been right, but maybe you did it the wrong way. You shouldn't have said it in front of the workers. You should have called to the side. And that's just one example. I mean, there could be many examples. But the minute you own it and say, I don't have it right. I don't know the answer. What it does is it says, wow, these Christian people are real. They're honest. And your congregation, your group, your people are going to know when they're going through it, they can go to you. See, the problem is when we all wear a mask, people are hurting in your congregation, in your team, but they won't come to you because they look at you and say, they have it all together. We worked for years at that, you know, and seeing that in churches. Like, when I was a kids pastor, I had a youth pastor and his wife, and I thought their life was perfect. Everything looked perfect. It's not till 2 decades later you find out the truth. Well, it wasn't so perfect, but they kept the mask on real tight. Listen, if you wear a mask today, I want to encourage you, be authentic, burn the mask, stop it. And I think that you said church, I also think in the presence of people who want harm for you, don't expose yourself to that. Don't expose yourself to someone who doesn't like you, they're trying to get rid of you. But you can be cordial and you can be kind, but they don't have to know everything about you. You got to know who you are, what drives you, and what are you passionate about. Man, whatever that passion is, tie into it. I tell people, like, if you're going to work the rest of your life for something, why don't you at least do something you like? You can do anything. Do something you like. If you're doing something you don't like, and that's the second time I said that, so that must be for somebody here, but if you're doing something you don't like, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Job security, you know, my future, my parents would want me to do it, it's what I went to college for. If you're miserable, change. If you're miserable, start something new. You get one life. Well, yeah, actually, you get another life. That's for a whole other sermon. All right, but you got one life here, all right? Here, wherever you are, you got one life here. Live it. Make it count. Don't continue to wait and say, oh, well, maybe one day I'll do this, or maybe one. No. Do it now. Now is the time for you to move. Now is the time for you to strike. Because your message must include passion. And if you don't know what your passion or you're not living your passion, then don't worry about how you're communicating externally. Go back in the house and look for the keys. Go back in your heart and look for your passion. Go back to where you are and ask yourself that question, like, what is important to me? What do I want my life to be when it's all said and done? What do I want written in my obituary? That's an exercise sometimes you do with people, is write your own obituary. Would you want to, well, Joe Schmo worked at this mundane job that he hated for 65 years until he could get Medicare, and then it was over. Is that what you want your story to be? I don't think so. I look, I'm going to brag on this guy right here. This is Pastor Rex. Everybody say hi, Pastor Rex. Hi. We work at a church together. His brother, he don't let life stop him. He just got back from Africa. He's helping. We got 300 orphans right now in Africa that he helps oversee. Listen, that's chaos. That's crazy. He doesn't have to do this. He could be like playing golf every day.
I can't afford that many golf.
But what he decided was, what is my passion? And he is passionate. You talk to him for 1 minute about Africa, he'll tell you all about the miracles that God has done inside of Africa. But he had to make that decision. He had choices. You have choices. You have to make the decision. And him making that decision wasn't easy, but it's worth it. Because if you asked him today, would you want to be anywhere else right now? I believe that he'd say no. Because he knows he's sitting right in the center of what God has for them.
I think the other thing about that is, on my bucket list, Africa was not there. I followed him for 62 years. I drugged God around the world, and he finally said, stop, I'm going to show you where you're going. And that changed my life. Pray about it. Think about it. You think you know where you want to go. God knows where you want to go.
He knows where you're going to go one way or another. Right? Either you're going to go today or next year. You're going to keep going around that mulberry bush till you get there. Listen, Moses got there. He was 80. He's just getting started. So don't let age be anything that's going to stop you, because God is patient. All right? Imagine your audience. Who are they? Who are the people you got to communicate? Are they preschoolers? Are they parents of preschoolers? Are they friends? Are they employees? Is it your boss? All right, whatever it is, imagine your audience, and then imagine what some of their questions are going to be about what you have to communicate. Why? Does God care? Is what you're telling me even important? And I would say, why is it important? Why is what you're telling me important? Why am I spending my time here right now? Why am I here? And for some people, maybe it's even in counseling, where was God? And get ready for that question. Because if you're talking to someone who's gone through a very hard time, they may ask that question, where was God? When we proactively prepare ourselves for the hardest questions, it gives us a level of peace as we enter into the meeting, into the conversation, into the sermon, whatever it is. If you don't know, anxiety, stress, fear, all that stuff begins to rise up. When you are prepared for it, peace. And I would say peace which surpasses all understanding. I read that somewhere once. It's powerful. It's powerful. And then as you imagine that, speak to them. On a regular week inside of my life, I have the opportunity to teach cowboys, anorexics, and the elderly. It's not the same message for each one of these groups. Cowboys, we actually have one of our satellite campuses on a ranch. And so they got people that travel from all over that go there. But the way you communicate with a cowboy is not the same way that I'm going to communicate with someone who's suffering with anorexia or bulimia, which is a rehab center that I teach at every week too. You're going to use different terminology. You're going to have to understand where they're coming from and where they're at. I understand that for my average cowboy in Wickenburg, Arizona, they like freedom. Freedom is important. Liberty is important. That's why they're out there roping things. I live in the roping capital, they say, of the world. I don't know about that, but I think that looks good on a billboard. But I don't know. But there are a lot of ropers there, and I think there's more horses than people sometimes in my town. That's a lot. But then right after I'm done there, then I got to go to a rehab center. And when I'm speaking with someone who has anorexia and bulimia, do you know their self-worth is down here? So frustrated, so broken, so hurting. So I'm talking to someone who's living the life, right? Roping cattle 5 days a week. their self-esteem is here. They're having a great time. They're in a great place. And then I go here, same message, but you got to communicate it differently. You got to think through, how are they going to take it? How are they going to go? Some of the elderly inside of my community, the average age inside of my town is 60. 60. That's the average age. That means half the folks are older than 60. All right? 60 is a great age. The older I get, the younger 60 is. I'm actually looking forward to it. All right? I get better with age. I'm like wine. And so if you find yourself in this spot, ask yourself, you're not going to communicate to preschoolers the same way you're going to communicate to the preschooler parents. If you want to have a second meeting, you're not going to. Trust me, it's a different way of communicating. Know who you're talking to and how to communicate to them. And you have to believe that God has anointed you and called you for this moment, and He is speaking to you, and He is speaking through you. In other words, you don't go into this meeting, you don't get up on that stage without praying to God. God, I need your help. And I don't care, even if it's just a meeting with somebody that's having a rough time, someone that's going through a difficult time with their spouse, and you're going to be meeting with them. I want you to pray. Pray before that meeting. Maybe pray with them at the meeting. Hey, before we get into whatever we're going to talk about today, let's pray. Pray for God's leadership, and then have faith that God is going. And so, as you're speaking, trust that when He gives you this idea, that it's not so foreign that you shouldn't say it. I was sharing the other day, just randomly in this sermon, and I used these 3 cities. I don't know, maybe I'll just say it like Wickenburg, Phoenix, and Spain, or something like that. Like, just out of the ordinary, like some word. And I didn't use it in any other sermon. This person comes up to me afterwards. Did you know I was from Spain? No, I had no idea. I don't even know why he said it. I think it was a stupid thing to say. He was like, no, man, I'm from Spain. And he started talking to me. I had no idea. But you know who did? And God used one word. God allowed one word to bring this person right back into the message. Because from that moment, he's like, how did he know? I didn't know. I take no credit for that at all. God takes all the credit because God cares about that person sitting in that seat. God brought that person all the way from Spain to heaven on earth, Wickenburg, Arizona, to hear that message at that moment. That's what God had for. So if you get something over here, don't be so rigid where you got to go A plus B equals C. Don't be so rigid. Let God be God in your life. And sometimes you're going to say some things that aren't on your notes, and that's okay. Trust God. God has been doing this for a really, really long time. And as far as I'm concerned, He's been doing a pretty darn good job at it. Right? Think about all of history. God's been there. God created time and then stepped into it. Right? My Bible tells me that before you were ever even conceived, He was forming you. And then He formed you in your mother's womb. That's what my Bible says. God did that. Like God did that with a plan and a purpose for you. Ephesians says that He knows the plans that you're going to walk in. That He's already planned things for you to do. Wrap your mind around that. Like these preschool meetings you're having, these church meetings you're having, this youth ministry, the teenagers that are driving you crazy right now. God knew. And you're the perfect person to minister to the people in your life right now. Your experiences, everything that you've had up to this moment has prepared you for this time because it's not by chance that you're there. It's not by chance that they're there. But sometimes we need to reignite this passion inside of our life where I am called for this ministry. I am called to be this leader. I am called to say these things. And God is with me. And all I have to do is trust God and let God be God in me and through me, and I'll see all the difference. I love what Paul said. He said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. He who plants and he who waters are one, and each will receive his wages according to his labor. But who brings the growth? God. Now think about that for your ministry, for your area. We need to plant, we need to water, but sometimes God's the one that's going to bring the growth. You know, when I was 19 years old, I needed a job. I took a job as a carny. You guys know what carnies are? It's a high. It's very, a lot of people want this job. And I was working in the back of a corn dog booth. And I was living in Ohio at the time. And so we went across state lines to Pennsylvania. And at the time, okay, I'm 19 years old. Just a little picture of what I look like externally. I had this, I love these things called Jenko jeans, which are these really like big jeans. And I had like combat boots on. And my head was shaved. And I had this big chain coming down out of my wallet. And I walk into this little corn dog booth. Like this, it was a food truck before food trucks were cool. They're cool now, but back in the day they weren't cool. And I go there, and there's this lady. She's probably in her 50s. She just took the job. She lived there in Pennsylvania. And then she saw me walk in. I felt so bad for her. Because I know in her mind she's thinking to herself, oh my gosh. Because I wasn't a happy guy. I was grumpy and mean and not nice, But I'm in there making corn dogs and doing whatever. This lady had something different, though. She was happy. No, she was joyous. She was like the happiest person I'd ever seen in my life. And I remember at the end of my shift with her, I was like, I don't know what you're smoking, but I want some. Because she gave me a Bible. She said, read this tonight. I said, all right, cool. I went back to they put me in the back of this truck that had these homemade bunk beds, 3 on top of each other. I hop in the top bunk and I open this big book. And I'm like, there's no way I'm reading this thing tonight. So I just let it open into the middle, and it opened to this book called Proverbs. And Proverbs is like these little nuggets, exactly what I need in this moment. God is so good. And as I'm reading these on the top bunk, it's like a hand is coming up out of the Bible, smacking me across my face and going back in. It was like my story. It was like God was speaking directly to me. Read Proverbs 1 through 10 and you'll see why, all right? It was like God was talking to me. And I'm trying to talk to my buddy. He's on the other bunk. I'm like, man, you should read this. He's like, shut up and go to bed. I'm like, all right, man. But the next day I went back to this lady and I was so moved by what I read. I was giving her back her Bible and I said, thank you so much. And she was like, well, what are you doing? I said, well, here, I'm giving you your Bible back. I'm going to get me one of those when I get back to Ohio. And she was like, no, just keep this one. And then she made this statement. She said, and I want you to know this, I'll be praying for you. I never saw this lady again another day in my life. Shortly thereafter, I ended up giving my life to Christ. My life has never been the same ever since. And I know it's because of this one lady I met in this food truck booth so many years ago. This lady had no idea of what God has done. Has no idea of what God has been able to do through this opportunity of just giving someone a Bible. Don't ever discount your influence. You are making a difference. You are impacting people's lives. You are touching people. Don't give up and don't get discouraged. Keep going. You may be a planter, you may be a waterer, but the one thing that you're not going to be is the person bringing the harvest. God's going to do that. So let God be God. Maybe your moment is just to encourage them. Maybe your moment is to direct them. Maybe if they leave, they leave. If you operated with integrity, it's okay. You've done all that you can do. You are not called to be perfect. You are called to be faithful. Can I get an amen? Amen. That's important. Right here, right? Not called to be perfect. You're going to write that one, you're going to put stars, you're going to highlight that one, you're going to put that all over, right? You tattoo that one backwards on your forehead. You're going to be all right? See it every time you look in the mirror. That's important. Because Christians sometimes believe we're called to be perfect. Oh, you're a Christian now. You don't do this, you don't do that. No, I'm messed up as I was before, but now I got Jesus in my life, and He's at work, but I'm a big case. And it's going to take Him a little bit of time to get me to where I need to be. And God is patient. When He views you, He doesn't view you. It's like the day you said the magical incantation and became a Christian. Poof! The fairy godmother made you into the perfect Christian. It doesn't happen. You know what it is? That moment when you surrender your heart and surrender your life to Jesus, what you're doing, there's a line here and you're crossing over. You're saying, God, I'm all in. I'm broken, messed up, bruised, wrong, sinful, but I'm giving you all of me. Take me. I'm yours. That's what Christianity looks like. It's not crossing the thing and saying, oh, no, I'm great, and I got everything perfect. I pray every day, and I memorize John 3:16. And, it's not that. That is not Christianity. Christianity is about getting dirty. It's about your willingness to be real and honest and vulnerable and true, and to get in people's dirt with them and to say, listen, I know you're going through hell right now, but I'm here to tell you, you don't need to go through hell alone. I'm here to go with you. And listen, there's going to be moments I don't have the right answer to give you, but I'll let you know this. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to stand with you. I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to be there. That's what faithfulness is all about. So the next time you get on yourself for being perfect, or not being perfect, remind yourself, I'm not called to be perfect. I'm called to be faithful. And in being honest with you, if I'm being faithful, then I'm doing what God has called me to do. Last one is this. Did you miss it? Here you go. Here you go. You can get it. All right, good. Philippians 1:6, and we're almost to an end. And I am sure of this, he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. Who's bringing it into completion? Jesus. Everything that has happened in your life is on your journey. The day you started following Jesus, you got on a new path. On your path, there's ups and downs and all arounds, right? I mean, there's some times when you're not going to know the next turn's going to take you. But you take that turn anyways, knowing that you're not taking that alone, but knowing that it's not your responsibility to know the end. It's not your responsibility to know the outcome. Your only responsibility is to stay faithful and know that God will complete the work that He started in you. Our responsibility, really, ideally, is to rest. And what do we rest? We rest in Him. And as we rest in Him, then we have the confidence to communicate, to connect, and to do all that He's called us to do. Are there any questions here at the end?
Just a statement.
Yeah.
If you have youth, a great thing is to have them build their core values. Great.
Yeah.
2-3 weeks might take. If you're a pastor, have your staff in a big church
Mm-hmm.
build their core values. If you're in a small church, have the church build their core values. We have ours up in the church.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds people this is who we are. And core values can be tough. There are core values that we use. One, the unforgivable sin in our church is to continue to talk about people, to divide the church. That's gossip. We do not put up with gossip in our church.
You have your core values memorized?
Pretty much so, yes.
Say what they are.
Rush to the front.
Well, we can give that to you, but we can definitely tell you, like Grace is our top one. We say we're a second chance church. No perfect people allowed. So you can come, and laughter is one of our core values. And so and that's one of my personal values too, where I say if I haven't laughed in a while, I'm taking myself way too serious and I need to relax a little bit. Firefighter is one. We run to the fires, not from the fires. Unity is really, really important. Psalm 133:1, blessed is he. Exactly, yeah. Unity is not fake, real unity is is so important. And then I was going to say one more, but I forgot it. What? Oh, yeah. Action is one. And then the last one was generosity. And generosity is cool because we can just explain, as a church, we're generous people. And we try to live that out. So everything that comes in, we put in a 10%. We take 10% right off the top. We tithe as a church. And then we're able to help people throughout the community that maybe have a need or do different things like that. So it's really who we are, but it's not just on a board. It's what we live. And that's the difference between your core values. And I'll just leave you with this about values. Ideally, if you were to do it, I would encourage you to do 10 core values for your life. I would encourage you to do 3 behaviors for each value. Those behaviors would have to fit the criteria of a SMART goal, which is specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely. Okay, I know I said those really fast, but and then I would do 3 behaviors for each goal. So at the end of all your work, you'd have 30 different behaviors. What you could do is you could look at your schedule at the end of a month and say, did I do these behaviors? Some behaviors you're going to say, yes, I did. Some behaviors you didn't. So if you didn't do that behavior that links with the value, you got to ask yourself, is that value important? I thought some values were important to me. I had the value of the outdoors. I think think I was watching too much Survivor Man. And I got this idea that I like camping. And then I went camping and I said, this is the worst thing ever. I like to fly places and get an Airbnb. That's what I like. That's how I like to roll, right? I'm not a camper. I don't like building fires and cooking hot dogs. I don't. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because remember, values can be different for different folks, right? So if you have that value, it's fine. But then if I got to the end of the month and I said, no, I didn't do this value at all, then the next month I would prioritize that value. If I get to the end of the second month and say I didn't do it at all, what I would do, I'd change my value. I'd change my value. Yeah, dump it. But you got to add a new one so that you always have 10 with 30 behaviors. Yeah. So that's if you were going to do core value work, that's what I would encourage you to do. Man, you guys have been awesome. I hope you enjoyed your time today. I sure enjoyed being with you at 8:30 a.m. morning session, yeah. Rumor has it there's some food out there for you to eat. And I got my card on the back if anyone wants my card. It's just my coaching card. I had it in my bag, so I threw it back there for you if you want it. And I'm here if you've got any questions. And, of course, Pastor Rex and his lovely wife Karen are here, too. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.